Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we're diving into an unseen world of thoughts, feelings, and what it means to be human and deal with mental health in the world that we are living in today. So, tonight, we're turning our attention to the stigma of mental health in the Latino community, but we're going to be more specific. Today, we're going to target the group that has been silently suffering. And I'm not saying all of them, but we're saying that, statistically is one of the groups that is being the quietest. So it's men. And what's going on beneath the surface? Why does men seem to carry the weight of the world without even saying a word? And the stigma and the mental health between men and women. And to help us with that, we have Dr. Francisco Reynosa Segovia. He is a psychologist. He was here with us. He is from UCLA, and he is here to help us. Dr. Francisco, thank you so much for coming back. You were here in our previous show. We did it in Spanish. So this time we're doing the show in English, and we are covering a very interesting topic, a little bit different than last time. So thank you so much for being here. Welcome back.
Hi, Brenda. Thank you so much for having me. And yes, it's good to be able to deliver information in different languages. I'm happy to do this in English as well.
Yes, it's awesome, right?
It's great that we're
doing for everybody. Everybody can learn about this, especially our Latino community that we have a lot of bilingual people. So we're very grateful that you were available to do this show. So let's move on. Let's start with this show. As I mentioned before, one of the main focus in this show, or for today's show, is the stigma in the Latino community, but more specifically, the stigma of mental health in the Latino community, but more specifically with men and the statistics of it and the difference between men and women accepting this the therapy, right?
Yep. Yeah,
Let's start.
Yeah, sure. This is a great topic, and there's a lot of information. This is nothing new. It's a topic that has been researched for a few years now, and there's many multiple factors that contribute to the different rates of service utilization, like you said, accessing services, going to mental health care or therapy. So let's start with some statistics, like you were saying. So the first thing I want to share with the audience and with everyone, so that we have some context about this topic, is that in general, women are more likely, like in just women in general, right? Latinas, non-Latinas, white, in general, women in the U.S. are more likely than men to seek out and receive mental health treatment compared to men in general. Now now we break this down in terms of ethnicity, right? Now we look at whites, Hispanic, and other subgroups. We see that whites, non-Hispanic whites adults who are adults, they are more likely to receive services compared to Hispanic or Latinos, as well as Blacks and Asian Americans. So that's huge. In terms of percentages, we see that white adults, about 23% of them, compared to the other subgroups, they do seek out and receive mental health services. So again, we can talk about some of the factors that contribute to why is it that white adults, male and females, are in general seeking out services more frequently than other subgroups or other minorities. We can talk about some of those things. And then last statistic I want to share with you, Brenda, before you ask any other questions to learn more about these things in depth, is that nearly 1 in 4 women have received mental health treatment in the past 12 months compared to 13.4% of men. So again, if we think about it, 1 in 4 women seeking out and receiving services compared to only 13.4% of men, which is less than 1 in 4 men. We see that that's a great difference, a substantial difference in general.
Wow. Yeah, in general. So, wow, that is a big difference. And why do you suppose that is? Why are women more open to receiving the services? Just in general, as we're speaking.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about some other factors in general, and then we can maybe talk about more in the terms of the Latino community and our communities. So I think in general, there's a lot of stigma, like you were saying, the stigma that is transmitted from generation to generation. And in addition to this, and when we talk about stigma, just to clarify, these are the beliefs, negative beliefs associated with, being judged or fear of being think of someone as less, as weak, right? So that's some of the stigma, perceived stigma that may exist. And then in addition to this, we see the cultural norms, right, that have been embedded and have been transferred and continue to persist throughout the let's say generational um structures, which are cultural norms, right? So again, thinking that the male has this specific role in the family, he's not supposed to look weak, he's supposed to be working and always caring for the family. And
That is
women, they're allowed to be more sensitive and express their feelings and feel weak at times. That's seen as acceptable, perhaps, or they're allowed to do this at times.
that's very true. I think that's a factor. But you're right. Like if in general, most women are sensitive and they're like, okay, if you suggest to a woman, I think you should seek some help and find a therapist. They're more open to that. If you say to a man, not I'm not saying everybody, every single man, I'm not saying every single man, but when you suggest to a man, they have more of this difficult time saying, hmm, why are you saying that? Because I'm crazy? You think I'm crazy? Or, they will, come back at you with something like that. And so you're absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah, but then again, if we think about it, this thought thoughts or what you just described occurs from an early age, right? We see this in children, right? If children are playing the background and someone gets hurt, I guess it's okay. It's well accepted in the society to see a girl crying, sharing how she's feeling, perhaps, and encouraging that. But then we men, we perhaps don't encourage that as much, right? I'm talking about in general, not just men to men, or we say, oh, men are not supposed to be crying, men are not supposed to be doing this, and we're already imposing these stereotypes and these roles, which again can ultimately contribute to this mentality of, I'm okay. If I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling anxious, I'm okay. I can deal with this on my own. I don't need mental health services. And then if there's mental health services, I don't need those, I can manage on my own, and I need to continue going for my family. I need to continue doing what I'm doing and remain strong, right? So I think it starts from an early age and it's huge. It contributes not only to your attitude towards mental health, but in other different areas as well.
That's that's awesome. So let's go let's move on into describing a little bit on what does it look like to walk through through therapy, through the door of therapy. It's like, what does the session kind of looks like? And then I also will love for you to explain to people like what are some of the confidentiality and the paperwork that is done and what kind of protections do you have, especially in the for our Latino community who feel like they either don't have insurance and they cannot get the service, and then or they're undocumented and they don't want to share any information.
Yes, great questions, Brenda. So let's start with your first part about what therapy looks like. So, for context, I'm a clinical psychologist. I have a doctorate, but again, let's remember that there's a different array of providers, right? We have people with master's degrees, social workers with master's degrees, MSWs, MFT. So we have a wide array. Psychiatrists too, who perhaps also provide psychotherapy in addition to medication. So let's just put that out there to remember that there's different providers and they're going to have different approaches to therapy, right? I'm going to share my own personal experience as a trained psychotherapist, as a clinical psychologist. This might differ from other therapists. But usually, what I like doing with my patients when I see them for the first time is that just asking that question: have you ever received mental health care before? And based on their answer, either if it's yes, no, I thought about it, I try to use that to elaborate my treatment session, right? If they have not received any, if they don't know what mental health looks like or a psychotherapy looks like or a therapy session, I'm gonna start with very simple, basic stuff, right? Like explain, like you were saying, okay, this is what psychotherapy is. We're here to do this. We're not here to do that. So debunking some of those myths, let them ask questions, right? As many questions as they have. Reassure them that again, their information is gonna be private and confidential. And for those folks who may have received psychotherapy in the past who are familiar with the process, I try to find out, okay, well, what's it that worked out? Why did you stop? What do you think of your provider? And again, I try to use that to um, make the therapy session more amenable and, for the patient to be more interested in pursuing psychotherapy with me and not making some of the mistakes or things that they didn't like in their previous sessions. So that's your first question, Brenda. I just let the patient tell me about their experiences in the past with psychotherapy, and then I go from there. I'm very flexible and I try to work with them and of course accommodate them as much as I can.
Hi, I'm Helen. When I want to learn something new or dive into fascinating stories about Los Angeles and its unique subcultures, I turn to Joe Benavides. His podcast opens up a world I've never heard before, from hidden histories to voices you won't find anywhere else. So if you're curious like me, check out Visual Frontier. It's not just a podcast, it's a journey.
Awesome. So tell me now, what does paperwork look like? Like, if I have no idea how to get a therapist or how to look, and I know that my insurance might not cover it, is there any place where I can try to get affordable mental health? And what am I expected to, what do I expect in terms of paperwork, information that I have supposed to share?
Yeah.
Um,
Great question. So yeah, that's a great question. So definitely currently, and we mentioned this in our previous interview or our previous discussion that we had in Spanish, that Medicare, they do cover in California, they do cover mental health services as of right now. But again, we might see that this may change in the near future as a result of the federal government and changes to, and even the California government, Governor Newsom, who's trying to also cut back on some of these benefits from the community specifically. So that's something that might change. But as of right now, as it is, you may just, again, go to this website, Psychology Today, look up a psychotherapist there. You can filter your search to see if they take medical, Medicare, what insurance do they take? Do they take payment plans perhaps, or financing for your sessions? Those options are there in that Psychology Today website. And in addition to this, some other clinics, and again, this depends on the symptoms that you have, the needs that you have, right? So it could be depression, anxiety, it could be more severe like schizophrenia, paranoia, and substance use. It really depends where you can go to get services that are available, and they might be even free at times. So for instance, at UCLA, right now they're offering services that are free to children and adolescents in one of our clinics in the psychiatry department. And again, it's on a first come first served basis, and they need to screen you and evaluate you to see what's going on. So again, it depends, but there's opportunities. That's what I'm trying to say. You just have to look specifically for what you're looking for, get referrals, do the research, and ultimately, you're really interested in doing this, you'll make it work out. It will work out eventually. And so there are many opportunities out there here in California. We're very fortunate to have that benefit.
I also want to share that people can call their service provider, their health service provider, and it's like an 800 number. They will refer you to a list of service providers, psychotherapists in your area, and it's just calling that 800 number that you have in your card, and they will give you a list. And you can also be specific, like if you want a female or do you want a male. Or do you want someone specialized in a specific topic? You can do that too, and they will send you a list of providers, and then it's up to you to do your homework and start, calling and stuff. But those options are available, and they don't ask you for anything as long as you have Medi-Cal, Medicare, and you have access to that 800 number. They can mail you the information, because even a lot of people don't have internet access. A lot of our community, Latino community, especially elders, and they can just mail it to you to your house, so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that's true, Brenda. And that number that you're, well, the numbers that may be relevant for our audience or people who maybe need a mental health services, that 988 number. So you just dial 988. If you're in a crisis, you're having a life crisis or suicide crisis, you're able to just dial 988 and you get information. And even if it's not severe, you can just call there and they might transfer you to a different uh, provider or, whatever services you might need.
That's true. Thank you so much for reminding me that. And this morning I was looking at it because I got something in the mail and I have it in my fridge. So it's very important, people, to have that number as your 911, because it's called 988, and it's from the city of Los Angeles. It's might not be available for everybody. I think it's only in the city, but I'm not sure if it's in the county. Um, but it's depending on the cities too. The library is a very good resource. You can find a lot of information on different different service providers, organizations that are provide any services for free, for supporting in different topics, especially teenagers, seniors, and so on. So thank you for reminding me that 988 people. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know last time I was remiss not to get this information, but now I do have it. So 988 is going to be key. Yeah,
Yes.
free, and yeah, just dial.
Repeat it later again. So reminding everybody. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to our next question. So this one, it's it's focusing a little bit more, and again, we're gonna focus on the group of Latino and the Latino community. So I am curious on what is the emotional wiring is different from women to men, and when it comes to therapy. So like, a lot of people, I know that as it is, if males are, some men have difficulty acknowledging that they want to take that step to therapy. They finally do, then they want to focus on a male therapist, or a female therapist. So what is the difference that women and men experience in therapy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've been very fortunate to experience what you're saying. Well, not fortunate. It's been a very steep learning curve to learn what you're saying. So in short, we see that Hispanic males, I think they feel more comfortable talking to males, therapists, and specifically they speak the same language and the same culture. Of course, they're gonna feel more comfortable. So I've been able to do that when I have male patients or clients. They feel comfortable talking to me about their issues, and again, we start by talking about soccer, like football, and then we talk about we jump into their stuff about their life. But see, we can share that commonality in cultural values and interests to open up for them to start opening up, right? And then conversely, on the other side, I also seen women who don't feel very comfortable with me at first. And it makes sense, right? Like some of them have been sexually abused or they have been victims of domestic violence by male partners and they come to see me, right? A male. So it would make sense that they are not willing to open up about their troubles and the most intimate personal life problems with me at first, right? But that's my job as a therapist. And I think all other therapists and providers need to have this responsibility to be able to acknowledge the fact that perhaps we're having a hard time, the patient is having a hard time opening up because I'm a male, because of my gender, because of my race, whatever it is, and then using your skill set to be able to get the client to, work with you collaboratively. So I've seen both ends. Like I said, males who don't want to see a female and females who don't want to see a male as a therapist because, again, they're scared or shy or whatever it is. And that's totally fine. It makes sense. But again, our job as therapists is, again, no matter what patient you are working with, female, male, black, white, whatever it is, trans, we need to be equipped and ready to be able to work with them. That should be the expectation, that we need to inform ourselves, get the information that we need, the education that we need to be able to treat our patients ably. And we're not able to do that, then the best course of action will be to refer our patient to someone else who's more capable of providing to meet their needs. because otherwise, yeah, it's not gonna be beneficial for the patient. And again, even the patient, that's the thing for the others I wanted to share. If you're going to seek out services, and for some reason you see that the therapist or you feel that the therapist is not a good match, you can always request to switch to go to see someone else. You can ask for a referral somewhere else. So you don't have to stick with that psychologist or psychotherapist or psychiatrist, whatever it is, provider all the time. You're free to switch, right? And I know for those who have limited access to resources or services, such as undocumented individuals, it might be harder to perhaps get a referral or switch somewhere else. But again, it's worth checking it out, right? Giving it a try and trying to seek someone who's gonna fit your needs. Um, and
That's true. And just because right now it just came to me that there's also another option. There's an option of having like a group therapy, right?
yeah,
If people don't feel totally comfortable like right away jumping in with like a one-on-one,
yeah,
they can they have an option to, especially for male. I was just talking to a someone who practices this extreme the martial arts, the MMA. And is this group in Mexico where they realized that because there is a lot of injuries involved in this sport, having a lot of the athletes um have an injury and then not being able to come back right away because then they have some trauma from the injury. And so what they ended up doing, excuse me, is they ended up including psychotherapy into their sessions.
yep,
So they created support groups and therapy groups so that the male felt a little more comfortable, and also the other team, they create teamwork, team playing, and they support them also emotionally, not just physically. So I thought that was like amazing. But so tell me a little more about like therapy groups and how did that work, and what
yeah.
people maybe might be willing to just make that their first step.
Yeah, well, let me start off by saying that I love this idea. Whoever created your friend who maybe started the group is such an excellent idea. Like we discussed in our last interview, our last discussion, that our mind and body are connected, right? It's a connection. So when it's disrupted, like your friend, with all these injuries, it is likely that your mental health, your mind is also going to be disrupted as a result of these health disturbances or injuries. So it's super cool that they were able to incorporate the psychotherapy component to their groups. And then in addition to that, to what you're saying, yes, if you have a group of folks in general, right, like Latinos who do martial arts, who are working towards the same goal, of course there's going to be more buying. You're going to befriend other folks who have similar interests. Perhaps it's going to make the process easier, although there's other folks who might prefer individual therapy. But I could see, for instance, males, I could see that in females. But for males, I mean, I could see that, like having your bros, having your friends, making new friends and people working towards the same goal, facilitating those therapy sessions. And actually, I wanted to share, it's not a psychotherapy group per se, but there's another resource, another precious resource, and I think it's free. It was free back then. When I was a student at UCLA, I was an intern in this program. It's called Project Fatherhood at the Children's Institute Inc. in the Otis Booth campus, which is in LA. So they used to have this Project Fatherhood where we would meet once a week, and there was a mother. It was like a support group, and but here they would teach you how to be a good parent, a good dad, be involved in your child's lives, in your family's lives. And again, that's what you to related to what you were saying. The parents there the fathers would open up about their life, like, hey, I'm facing this, I'm facing that. And, other folks in the group, other fathers would relate to that. They would open up. And it was like a family. I felt like a family. And again, because we're all males, perhaps that made it easier that we could openly talk about our problems or the problems of what was happening. So this Project Fatherhood is still ongoing. It's been going on for years. I believe it's free. There's a group in Spanish and a group in English, and they meet on a weekly
Wow.
basis. The number for this, if I can share,
Yes, absolutely. Please do so.
so I don't forget, no se me olvide, is gonna be the number is 213-260-7604. So again, 213-260-7604. And also you go online and just Google Project Fatherhood. Children's Institute, it should come up and you can sign up either through their website or you can just call at this number to get more information about this program. And again, it's not a psychotherapy group, but it's more of a support group for parents who are experiencing problems with their family and themselves. And again, this is a start point, right? The starting point where you could just attend, get information. If you like it, okay, keep going. If not, you can maybe seek referral somewhere else.
Please give the number one more time.
Yes, 213 260 7604.
Perfect. Well, we are going to go into a small break. We'll come to the half hour. So we are going to be coming back and continue talking. But when we come back, I really want to focus a little more on males and what does it look like to, anxiety and depression on a male, because it's different. It's totally different than females and children and so on. So I want to touch on that. And I also want to touch a little bit on the consequences of what happened, specifically males and specifically statistically so far what we've seen in our communities, in lower income communities and Latino communities, of the consequences of not getting the services that we need when we need them. So we're going to go into a little break and then we're going to come back. We are back from our little break. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here with us. I am just going to do a really quick recap. We've been talking about therapy, psychotherapy, therapy. What does it look like for the community in general? We talk about the statistics and how specifically males are not looking for this therapy. They're not taking advantage of it. We're also talking about how our Latino community is really struggling on trying to find a good therapy that suits them. We talk about parent support groups, specifically this project that our Dr. Francisco Reynoso Segovia mentioned, the Project Fatherhood, which sounds amazing. And we also talk on the differences between therapy and introduce people on what does therapy looks like. So right now, as we are back, we are going to be talking specifically about males. What is therapy for? What does the symptoms of anxiety and depression looks like in males? Because it's totally different than females, and because females tend to be a little more in tune or emotional, they can tell when they are feeling down, when they're feeling depressed. And even though we ignore it, but that's another issue. We kind of know when we are feeling down, but males, it's a little different, the symptoms of male, for when they're going through anxiety and depression or so on. So please explain to us a little bit, what does it look like? What do men have to look for? What kind of symptoms, what kind of red flags they have to look for?
Yes, Brenda, that's a great question and happy to answer or share some information about this. So, yeah, I think the main thing is that, like you were saying, I think females are gonna be them more likely, not all of them, but we could say that most of them, or traditionally, they tend to be more vocal, right, about how they're feeling. So let's discuss briefly some symptoms of anxiety and depression. So let's say if they are that they cannot control their worries, they are restless, they are not able to get out of bed, they are feeling more tired than usual. They might just share this with other people, right? Like say their moms. And that's another key thing, right? That females tend to have more confidence, right, than males. Confidence, people that they can share their personal feelings and secrets with them, right?
Yeah, their best friends, their girl groups. Yeah, you're right. Their family, the
Yep.
tia.
Exactly. And as much as they share that chisme, they may also share some of their personal experiences with some of their close.
No, we don't share that much chisme. No. Get it? Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And then males, we see that maybe they have coworkers, they have buddies that they could hang out with, but they don't necessarily talk about their feelings the way females may share with others. So that's the first thing I think that is important to consider. So for instance, like I said, if someone is feeling um, more down than usual, they might share this versus a male, they might just keep them to themselves, right? So we might see the same symptoms, right? We might see that, okay, I see that my dad is more tired than usual. He's not getting out of bed. He's more restless than usual. I can see he's not able to stay sitting down for long periods of time. He's always moving around, like anxiety related symptoms. But again, if you ask this person, like, hey, are you okay? This man is probably gonna say, yes, I'm fine. I'm just, perhaps making up excuses or something to not share their actual feelings, right? Because again, we're entering, and in the case of Latinos, that machismo, right, is key. That machismo is not something that we see in females. Machismo is this belief that you have to be always strong,
It's like, man up.
man up, but no seas flojo, and all this.
Real men don't cry. You're not supposed to cry or ask for a hug. Or, I seen that with like even my own children with my father-in-law. Is like my son asking for a hug, and my father-in-law is like, hey, you're not supposed to do that. Man up.
That's
Back
machismo.
off.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what machismo looks like. And again, we're transmitting some of these things to our offspring and our, kids. Maybe not on purpose, but that's just our culture and our tradition. But again, we have to be aware of this machismo and how, yes, even as part of our cultural values, sometimes you just have to do what's best for your family, which is allow them to be vulnerable, right? And that's another thing I wanted to mention, that for our males, our Latino males who keep insisting that we cannot be weak, or we cannot be vulnerable, it's like we're not robots, we're not machines. We're humans, and humans, we get tired, we get sad. So for instance, sometimes I do ask my patients, oh, when was the last time that you felt sad, that you felt down? And they say, like, never. I never felt like that before. And it's like, that's impossible. We're humans. We have all these emotions, all these feelings for a reason. So the fact that they are trying to conceal them or hide them, that's, reflecting of, again, this machismo mentality, or, knowing.
What are like some of the signs? Because I know like for men, it doesn't look the same as for women, because obviously they tend to hold back. And so does women. To be honest with you, we're living in a society where women are feeling that pressure too, where, you're not supposed to cry because then you're weak.
Mhm.
And so it goes if it's affecting a woman, so I can see how it's affecting men because it's been happening longer. But what are some of the symptoms? Like I noticed, like at least with my son, because he's already a young adult, he tends to get really upset, and he gets grumpy and angry, and I'm like, what is going on here? So what are when they're showing things like that, what does that mean? What kind of feelings can they be processing or be
Good.
going through?
Good, Brenda. That was another key thing I wanted to share in terms of difference between females and males and how they display the symptoms. So the symptoms themselves may not change, right? So for anxiety, like I said, if someone has not able to control their worries, if they are restless, those are symptoms of anxiety that are going to be present most likely in both male and females. And same with depression. But then we see that men, like your son, because again, we're not getting the help, we're just holding it in, we're not sharing this with anyone, everything is accumulating, and then men are more likely to externalize their symptoms. Like you're saying, externalizing means I'm displaying these symptoms externally, right? I'm being grumpy, I'm being more violent, I'm being more impatient. So in addition to the actual symptoms that we look for anxiety and depression that are required to get a diagnosis, we see that men are more displaying these symptoms externally, right? Like I said, kicking, shouting, being grumpy, and as a result too, engaging in risky behaviors such as alcohol use, excessive alcohol use, substance use, right? We see men doing this more often than females. So yes, in addition to the symptoms that we see for depression and anxiety, they tend to engage in these more violent, risky behaviors, externalizing behaviors as compared to females.
You are absolutely right. So going now, transitioning into this effects of like the lack of being able to just feel safe and vulnerable, being able to express their emotions. You know, unfortunately, when the untreated mental health issues um, lead to things like substance abuse, um, anger, violence, and some of the consequences of that, which could end to um, definitely substance abuse is it's a big issue in our communities and basically in general in this country. And then a lot of that leading to homelessness. We have a high number of the population of homeless being males. And then incarceration, we see a lot of males being incarcerated. So tell me a little more on how going from like untreated mental health can lead to some of those issues.
Yeah, this is a very important question, but I'm not happy to answer it. So, or try to answer it. So the first thing is that to remember that if you don't treat your mental health challenges or problems, in the long term is going to have an impact on your health, right? So like we said, the mind and body connection. So if I'm stressed all the time, if I'm mad all the time, if I'm hypersensitive to stressors all the time, that's going to have an effect in my health, right? That could lead to diabetes, could lead to cardiovascular conditions, could lead to high blood pressure and other risky health diseases or things that you may experience. Now, other folks in their effort to cope with these stressors, with this pain, because of all this stress that they are dealing with, they might engage, like you were saying, in substance use, alcohol use to help them cope with their um, hard realities or experiences. Like you were saying, that's going to impact again your relationship with your family, with your at work, right? You show up intoxicated, you drive intoxicated, right? That's gonna, probably, like we were saying, you're gonna end up in jail or hurting other people and potentially, not in a good place. So super important to remember that when these stressors, when these problems start building up, like I mentioned in our past discussion, our past interview, they're not going to weigh on their own. You have to start noticing them and treating them. And that leads me to another really quick thing I wanted to say about this is that usually we see that Latinos in general, Latinos who are born here or foreign born, instead of going to seeking out specialty services, so mental health services, when you're feeling down or experiencing these things at the beginning, that's usually not the case. We see Latinos who are experiencing more severe symptoms who have been accumulating for years, and then they start experiencing more like acute severe symptoms such as a panic attack, headaches, very suicide risk, and that's where you actually go to the emergency room. We see folks going to the emergency room as a result of that they have allowed for these things to build up, and now they have medical and psychological needs, and now it's an urgent thing that they need to attend to. So we don't see folks starting, okay, I'm feeling a little down, I should go see my psychologist or my mental social worker because I need help with this. No, we just wait until the end, until it's really bad, and then we have to go to the ER to get the help.
You're touching a very interesting point because I had not thought about it. But you're right, it affects um your physical health. And even at that level, when Latinos, your leg is swollen, you're like, I'm not gonna go to the doctor and I'm just gonna use the little, remedio from my tia and some ointment or something. But you know, so even when you can see that you're actually have an emergency and you have to go and rush to the hospital, you don't do it. So imagine the mental health that you can't really see what is happening. You can't really define because you've never really been in touch with your emotions. And so it's even more of this, um, I don't know how to say this. I guess we're blinded to that and we just ignore it. And so until this point, so just with your health, people, I'm just gonna say this, just with your health to the audience, um, you have to act the same way as with your mental health. If you have an emergency and you have to rush to the hospital, well, a mental health emergency, it's when you just hear some of the symptoms that Dr. Francisco described, and we should get some help before it just gets to this major issue. So, but it's so interesting how you connect. It's like it starts with your physical and then moves on to your health. And then at that point, it can be like a ticking bomb, you know?
Yeah, and there could be, in some severe cases, there's not coming back, right? Like,
Yeah.
you develop diabetes as a result of all this stress. That's it. I mean, yes, you can control your diabetes, but it's never going to be the same anymore. You cannot eat the same way you used to. When if you had started treating it before, taking care of it, it could have been avoided some of these permanent, lasting effects.
And like for in some cases, sadly, this could be, lethal. I mean, we're have an increased risk of suicide. We're not talking something like a headache, or no, I mean, our community really has to get serious about this.
Yep.
Especially because it's affecting a lot of young people. So, and a lot of them are men. I mean, I have men around my life and I see it. I see it around them. And um it's obviously, again, not everybody, you know. Um but I think it's also important to emphasize that as a family, you can give that support to those men. And so tell me, I know this was like not in the questions, but I really I would like, because we're getting close to, our the end, but I would like for you to say to the family, how can they support a man who's going through those symptoms that you described? Like they look angry, but they might not really be angry. They just might be sad or depressed. They're violent and they're drinking a lot, and
No.
you want them to get some help. How do you approach them so that it's not antagonistic or mean, or they don't feel defensive? um
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, but that's a very hard,
the $1 million question.
yeah,
Yes.
question, and I wish I had a simple answer. It really depends on a case by case basis. I would like to share with some of the families some of the things that you might want to do or try, like I said, to avoid being making the situation worse. So first, you need to identify. The first thing would be being able to identify at which stage or what stage is the person, the male, at the moment, right? Like we see if he's at risk of suicide, like he has expressed, or that he wants to commit suicide or do something to take his life, or attempt against his life in the past. Then perhaps, yeah, it would be best to always prioritize their health, regardless, or their safety, regardless of other things, right? Like, oh, it's gonna look bad, people are gonna think about us if we take him to the hospital. Like, no, you see that someone is at risk, just
Think it's serious.
take action, right? Take action. Like, don't wait, take action. And again, I'm saying, like, someone who has a very specific plan, like has said, I'm gonna kill myself tomorrow, I have a gun, I'm gonna use it. Like, yes, don't wait for those instances. Call 911, take him to the ER, do something, don't wait. So that's the first thing I would suggest. So identify at which stage the situation is taking place in. If it's something more, moderate, mild, then perhaps the first thing you want to do is be supportive, right? So, like you were saying, if you confront someone, especially a male, with a machismo, calling them out on their, on their flaws, perhaps, or making it seem that there's something wrong with them. Not only males, with everyone, But you take that approach, like, hey, what's wrong with you? ¿Qué te pasa, right? Like that approach is not gonna be the best. Perhaps again, just listening, right? Take that active listening approach. Like, hey, I noticed that this has been happening the last couple of days. I see that you're more down than usual. What's happening, right? Trying to have those conversations, casual conversations, without wanting to impose that something is wrong with that person. I think that was the first step. Second step was once you get their confidence, so they're able to open up about these things at their own time and pace. As long as you're supportive for them, being supportive for them, I think they'll open up eventually. Then again, you might wanna learn more about what's happening. Okay, mijo, mija, I know these are some of the symptoms that are consistent with what I heard. This is what I looked up. This I see that anxiety is kind of similar to what I'm experiencing. What do you think? Does that make sense, or am I just overreacting? What do you think? And again, when folks are too um, down or too anxious with their symptoms or in denial, they might not be able to see it, but it's worth giving a try, right? Like sharing this education with them. And then lastly, as a family, right, show that support all together, getting everyone the same page, your brothers, siblings, dad, mom, abuelita, grandma, everyone, and try to be supportive and making that first step to, okay, let's try to do this together, right? Let's try to get call, see where we can get services for you. You're not alone. We'll go together, right? You don't like it, I mean, we can stop doing it, or we can try somewhere else. So again, it's not a matter of imposing what you think is best, although at times it is, but trying to be flexible and understanding their needs, right? And again, when it's severe, you cannot afford that luxury of waiting and being patient. Sometimes you just have to act right away.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, because in our culture, especially women, we tend to be very dismissive, and older women too. Like we're like, I've heard this so many times from like my aunts and my grandmas, and they're like, when you say, "Oh, I feel depressed," they right away judge, like compare your life with their life, and they tell you, "Well, I had it more difficult, and I was never depressed." And so
Yeah.
I want to say, moms, grandmas, whoever's listening out there, do not do that, please.
Yep.
Do not. It's not helpful. It is not, especially for men, especially for young adults, especially for teenagers. It is not helpful. You're antagonizing them even more, and you're dismissive. You're like making them feel like what they're feeling is nothing. So I that's just been my experience, and I just want to put that out there for our
You're absolutely right.
females.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Brenda, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So this is very interesting. I really like this topic. I appreciate all this information that you're giving us, and I want to hear from you. Any advice that you can give to our community out there, who has been thinking of maybe taking the next step and trying therapy. Just sort of an advice, like what can you tell them so that they can actually take the step?
Well, so yes, a great point too, Brenda. So I think it would be key to, again, the same way we have traditions for different things in our Latino community, such as getting together on Sundays or the weekends to, spend as a family together, and try to make an effort to perhaps discuss some of these things openly rather than look up on these things as, being bad or negative. And again, it's not easy, right? It takes a lot of effort to do this, but I think making that first step of having these discussions in your family without necessarily, having this negative context associated with them, right? Like, oh, he's going to therapy, don't talk about it, or this person is taking medication, like we shouldn't don't mention anything. No, it's fine. Like, you can openly ask, like, hey, how's Fulanito doing? Is he stable? Is he taking his medication? Like, I think it's okay to ask those questions because you're showing that you care about other people in your family rather than just pretending that or avoiding talking about it. I don't know if that's the best course of action. So I think that would be the first thing. And then when a family is able to have these conversations openly, right? Like, okay, mental health exists, emotions are not at the best right now for this person. Again, trying to family is key. Family is key in our Latino community. Unfortunately, in some instances, there's only a few folks in the family, like you were saying, a single dad and the daughter. That's fine. They can still have these conversations, like checking about how are you feeling, and all of these things. Checking in, validating. Okay, you feel sad today. That's fine. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel angry, rather than saying you shouldn't feel sad, you shouldn't feel angry. You're strong. And again, we want to encourage our children to remain resilient and our family members to remain resilient when facing hard challenges and adversities in this life, especially in this country that is very challenging, and especially right now under the current political climate. But again, we want to be reassure our family members that we could talk about these things, mental health, our emotions, and everything is going to be fine. We're here to support them. And once, yeah, this person is like going back to your question, if this person is thinking about taking the first step, okay, I noticed that I'm not well, I'm feeling something is getting in my life, right? In the way of my life, I'm not able to do my work, I'm not able to take care of my family. Okay, then again, sharing this with other folks, not keeping it to yourself. And that's another thing I want to share with you, Brenda, really quickly, that research suggests that women they do report again more symptoms of anxiety, depression compared to males for that reason, Latino males, for the reason that we said, but they are actually sharing these things either in a questionnaire with other folks versus men. They're keeping them to themselves in terms of those things. And in terms of suicide risk, we also see that females perhaps experience more, especially teenagers. They share that they have thoughts about suicide or taking their lives, but then we see that males don't share that as openly. But then at the end, in terms of action, we see that males have the highest rate of suicide compared to females, right? So what am I trying to say? Where I'm saying that females, yes, they might express how they feel, their emotions, and their risk. Males, on the other side, they are keeping everything to themselves. And when the time comes that they cannot cope with this anymore, they just, attempt, they take more violent, aggressive actions to, take their lives or finish their lives. So it's super important to know, just because they're not sharing how they're feeling or their emotions, it doesn't mean that they're not going to do anything about it, right? So that's the thing I'm trying to encourage our audience to do, like checking in with these people, even though they are not actively displaying or sharing how they're feeling.
I think that's the reason why we should more share more focus, because we're not seeing the red flags.
Mhm.
And so that can be a very shocking news or surprise for a lot of families. And it's really, really sad. And again, we are talking statistics, people, so don't get on our case like, oh, everybody ever met. No, we are talking statistics. We're talking about what we're seeing in our community with the work that Dr. Reynosa is doing and the work in the community that I do. This is such an important topic. I see that in society, the males have been feeling less empowered. Um, and we're giving a lot of support and a lot of groups and a lot of efforts and resources to mothers and females, but we need to remember that in order to keep that balance, we need to support our men, support our sons and fathers and grandfathers, because they're part of the family. So I really like how you are telling people to just be able to identify, talk, communicate, put your phones down and have a little dinner, and ask people, how was your day? How are things going? And obviously, men are feeling more stressed because they're in our communities. They are like the providers and they feel like they have to provide. And everything that is happening with this administration, all the stresses, it's going to affect them. So we need to be able to have this communication with our man, with our fathers, with our husbands, with our sons. It's so important. So we are almost getting to the end, and we're going to remind everybody of that number that you mentioned, the magic number where people can call and get some help.
So the number that people can call to get some help in terms of mental health services is going to be 811. Is that the one you're referring to, Brand?
988.
998?
988.
Okay, I messed up there.
That's okay. It's 988. So that's one. And the other one for the parents, for the fathers who are interested about this supportive group, because I think it's awesome. So tell us the number again for the parent, the Project Project Fatherhood.
Yes, we're making a bit of mistakes here, but yeah, so 998 is the first one, and then this one for Project Fatherhood in Children's Institute Inc. Incorporated is 213-260-7604. You can say it one more time, 213-260-7604. Again, this group is available in English and Spanish.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're come to the end, and we just want to I guess just finish with a few words, like a message for our people, our community, for this whole mental health issue, and especially with our man, it really saddened me, and I really hope that we can put the word out there and make a difference. So that's why we're doing, because we care. So thank you, Dr. Francisco Reynosa Segovia, for being here, and your last words.
Just again, don't forget that you care about, you live for your family, you give everything for your family, providing, working so hard throughout your days, throughout your weeks, to the point that you're so tired and, you give your everything. Again, don't forget about yourself. Also put yourself first. And with that, I mean, again, don't forget about your body. When your body is telling you, something's wrong, when you're able to sleep at nights and something is amiss, just be aware of those things and let yourself be vulnerable. And being vulnerable doesn't mean that you're less than others. It means that you're a human being. And being a human being is not part of life. We cannot be always strong and, always resilient. Like there's up and downs, and that's life. That's reality, and that's fine. We just have to learn how to go about dealing with all these things.
Absolutely. And remember, just taking care of yourself doesn't mean you're selfish. So, because if you take care of yourself and you're good and healthy, you'll be there for your family. So thank you so much again. This was Perspectivas with Brenda Martinez. Muchísimas gracias por sintonizarnos. Hasta la próxima.